What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Sovereign Money. I'm about to show you something that's going to completely change the way you think about Bitcoin security. I'm going to show you how to build your own hardware wallet for less than the cost of a nice dinner out. And this thing is going to be even more secure and private than those expensive commercial hardware wallets that everybody is pushing. Now, I know what you're thinking. Building your own hardware wallet sounds really intimidating, maybe even dangerous. But stick with me here, because by the end of this video, you're going to see exactly why thousands of Bitcoin enthusiasts have ditched their ledgers, Trezors, and Blockstream Jades for this DIY solution called SeedSigner. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most SeedSigner builds you see online are pretty basic setups. What I'm building today has a special twist that's going to unlock some incredible functionality that most people don't even know exists. I'm adding a smart card reader directly into the device, which opens up a whole world of possibilities for advanced Bitcoin security that we're going to discuss in a future video or two. So what is SeedSigner? Well, first off, I need to thank a good friend of mine for sending me this kit to mess around with. He's the co-founder of SatoChip and wanted me to show you guys what this setup can do. But we're not going to be talking about SatoChip today. That's for another video. Today, we're just going to build a SeedSigner. That said, before we get our hands dirty with the build, let me explain exactly what a SeedSigner is and why it exists. The SeedSigner is an open-sourced, air-gapped, Bitcoin-only signing device that you build yourself using completely off-the-shelf components. The key word here is air-gapped, or is that words? I don't know. Which means this device can never connect to the internet or any other network, not wirelessly, not through cables, not through Bluetooth, not at all. Think about your current setup for a minute. If you're using a software wallet on your phone or computer, so-called hot wallet, you're connected to the internet with potential exposure to various attack vectors, from malicious websites to compromised applications. While modern operating systems, like this one, macOS, have strong security, and internet browsers like Brave or Mullvad provide significant additional protection, any internet-connected device still has a broader attack surface than an air-gapped device with no internet connection. Even if you're using a commercial hardware wallet, there are still trust elements involved. With Ledger, you're trusting their proprietary firmware. With Trezor, while the firmware is open source, you're still trusting their manufacturing process, supply chain security, and that the firmware that's actually flashed on your device matches the published code. Most users don't audit the code or build the firmware themselves. The SeedSigner doesn't have any of these drawbacks. It also uses what's called a stateless approach, which means it doesn't permanently store your private keys or seed phrases. First introduced in December of 2020, the SeedSigner pioneered this concept in the hardware wallet space. This concept has proved so compelling that other hardware wallets have adopted similar functionality. Blockstream Jade's hardware wallet, released in January of 2021, added its own stateless mode in late 2022 through firmware updates. Interestingly, Jade's stateless functionality even uses the Seed QR standard that was originally developed by SeedSigner, which Blockstream openly acknowledges. When you power the SeedSigner device on, you enter your seed phrase, use it to sign a transaction, and when you power it off, everything gets wiped from the memory. It's like having a bodyguard with amnesia who forgets everything they saw the moment they're off duty. The brilliant part about the SeedSigner is that it uses the Raspberry Pi Zero as its brain. This board was released back in 2016, almost a decade ago, before the Raspberry Pi Foundation started adding wireless capabilities to their devices. Now, you might be wondering why version 1.3 specifically. Version 1.3 of the Pi Zero has no internet connectivity capabilities. It has no Wi-Fi, it has no Bluetooth, nothing. This is not a bug, it's a feature of a Bitcoin hardware device. So when I say this device is air-gapped, it's literally physically impossible for it to connect to a network. There's no Wi-Fi chip to disable and no Bluetooth to turn off. The hardware simply can't transmit data. All right, let's talk about what you actually need to build your own SeedSigner at home. I'm going to walk you through every single component, where to get them, and why each piece matters. My build is a little bit different than the standard SeedSigner setup because I'm adding additional smart card functionality. But don't worry, it doesn't complicate things at all. First up is the heart of our build, the Raspberry Pi Zero 1.3. Now, while I'm using the Raspberry Pi Zero 1.3 to build this, you should know that you can actually use the Raspberry Pi Zero W or the Raspberry Pi Zero 2W as well. Even though these newer models have Wi-Fi connectivity built into the hardware, the SeedSigner software doesn't activate those capabilities, so they remain effectively air-gapped. But if you can find a Pi Zero 1.3, that would be ideal. Pi Zero 1.3 model is right here. This is the Pi Zero 1.3. It has some header pins attached, and actually at the moment, this camera is attached right into this end piece here, and I have it stuck to the back with some tape that came on the back of the camera. It's just wrapped around this corner here, but the connector is right here, and these are called GPIO pins. There's a micro USB port here for power. There's a micro USB port here for power and data. We don't use that one. This is a micro HDMI port, and this is the SD card slot, which when you insert it, you put it face down. And then this is the main processor right here. And that's about it. Not much to it. The Pi Zero 1.3 has a single-core ARM11 processor running at 1 gigahertz. It has 512 megabytes of RAM on that little guy, and most importantly for our purposes, a camera connector. Just to put this little computer into perspective, the Apollo guidance computer that got astronauts to the moon and back in the late 60s and early 70s had 4 kilobytes of RAM. This one has 512 megabytes. And the processor on that computer that got the astronauts to the moon ran at 2 megahertz. So this little Pi Zero has 130,000 times more memory and a processor that runs 500 times faster than what NASA used for the most ambitious space mission ever. So yeah, we've got plenty of computing power for our Bitcoin transactions. Now here's where my situation gets a little interesting. My Pi Zero arrived to me without the header pins attached. That's these little things right here that go through the board onto the other side, which is actually pretty common. Many Pi Zeros ship this way to keep the cost down and give you some flexibility on how you'd like to set it up. But for our SeedSigner build, we need those GPIO pins to connect the display and the optional smart card reader. Fortunately, my friend included in the kit a 40-pin GPIO solderless hammer-in header, which looks exactly like this. These are pretty clever little things. Instead of having to solder traditional header pins, which requires some skill and the right equipment, which I don't have, these hammer-in headers literally get pressed into place with a hammer, hence the name, and a special installation rig, which is what I had to go out and get myself. The one I picked up on Amazon is called the Vilros Heavy-Duty Hammer-In Pin Header Install Rig. And I have it right here. Let's take a look at it. This is the device I had to pick up at Amazon. It comes apart, and basically you attach your Pi Zero right here on these devices, or on these 2 pins. You unscrew them, put the Pi Zero down on the base, and then slide this on top, and that sits on your pins, which are just resting above this. Then you take your hammer and you bang the pins into place. That's it. And so far, it's stuck. So this thing did its job. Again, it was about $20 on Amazon, and it came really quickly. Now, you might be tempted to try to install these pins on a Pi Zero without the hammer rig, install rig. I tried, and it was a disaster. So I highly would recommend picking up one of these install rigs with your kit if it doesn't come with pins pre-soldered. Next up is our display. I'm using the Waveshare 240 by 240 1.3-inch IPS LCD display hat. Why do all these parts have such long names? It's crazy. This display retails for $16.31, I don't know, on Amazon, and $14 on another site I'm going to show you in a minute. This specific display is what the SeedSigner is really designed around. It's bright, it's crisp, and it's perfectly sized for displaying QR codes and navigating the SeedSigner interface. The hat design means that it sits directly on top of the Pi's GPIO pins. What makes my setup different than most SeedSigner builds is that between the Pi and the display, I'm adding an optional smartcard hat for Raspberry Pi with USB-C input for power. And I found that part for $25. This little board adds incredible functionality that we'll explore in a future video. Suffice it to say, it can read smart cards like the SATO chip and the Seed Keeper, which opens up some really advanced security possibilities. And for the camera, you're going to need a Pi Zero compatible camera module that I found for $7.50. This is what reads all the QR codes for the transactions and settings. But make sure you get one that's specifically designed for the Pi Zero because the camera connector is a very specific size and not the same as other Pi modules. Next, you're going to need a micro SD card, which I found for $9 on Amazon, and you don't need to go crazy with the size of this card. 32 gigabytes or smaller is generally recommended, though I'm using a 64 gigabyte card and it's worked perfectly fine. Larger cards can sometimes cause boot issues, so you might want to stick with the smaller size, but make sure it's class 10 or better in speed. And finally, for the case, this setup came with a 3D printed case right here, and this one is black. It does come in other colors, and it has various openings for the various ports on the Pi and the screen and the smart card reader. That's what this opening is for here. This fits right on top like this, that, and then the card goes in there. And then there's an opening in the bottom for the camera. I found one online that's identical to this, and the cost was about $10. By the way, if you've been tallying these costs, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of around $86 US, plus any shipping or customs that you may have to pay. Not super cheap, but not bad for an air-gapped, secure Bitcoin signing device. Before we start assembling the hardware, we need to prepare the operating system. This is actually one of the most important steps from a security perspective, so I want you to pay close attention. It's super easy. Okay, let's head over to SeedSigner.com, and we're going to start there and work our way through to downloading the software that we need for our device. Okay, here we are at SeedSigner.com. And basically, we want to go to the software section of their website. I'm going to click that. And we want to download the latest release. There are some other downloads here, which we're going to get to in a second. But let's go to their latest release. I'm going to click that. That opens another window. And we are on SeedSigner 0.8.6 is the latest release as of this video. And if you scroll down here, there we go. These are the current releases. We want one that is designed for the Pi Zero right there. Okay? Not the Pi Zero 2 unless that's what you have, or the Pi 2, Pi 2W, Pi Zero 2W, Pi 2, Pi 4. These are all different models. We have the Pi Zero. That's the one we want. So we're going to download that. And then we're going to do something really important for the security of our Bitcoin and our device. Okay, here we are. I've got the firmware downloaded and it comes as a zip file, so I'm going to expand it. And then we have our SeedSigner image file. That is what we're going to put onto our SD card, that little card that I showed you earlier. But how do we get this onto the SD card? Do we just drag it onto that? Nope, that won't work. I tried that. What you have to do is you have to write the firmware onto the card so that the Pi is able to boot off of that card. And in order to do that, you need a special software. Let's go back to the SeedSigner's website and check it out. Okay, I don't know if you noticed, but there's some other things down here. Software verification and the Balena etcher. While we're in here, I'm going to download the Balena etcher. So this will likely take us to their website. Yes. And the Balena etcher is just a very small piece of software that allows you to burn an operating system onto an SD card or an external drive. So go ahead and download the etcher that matches your platform. I'm going to use Mac OS. If you have Windows, of course, use that, or Linux, you can use that. Actually, this is the Mac OS version because I have Apple Silicon. If you still have Intel Silicon, good for you. I wish it was Intel, running Intel chips, but then you would download this version. Let's go back to the SeedSigner website because I want to show you that other area. All right, I don't know if you notice this, but it's recommended to verify the download's authenticity. And I'm not going to go to this. This just takes us to the GitHub website. I'm going to go back to the page where we downloaded the software from that GitHub page. And that is right here. And I don't know if you noticed, but right here is this weird number right here. So I'm going to show you how to do this on a Mac. It's similar on Windows, but basically you need the SHA checksum of the file that you downloaded, which is the image file, not the zip file. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. In order to do that, I need to bring up my Mac terminal, and we're going to enter a command into that terminal. Okay, here we are at the terminal on my Mac, and I have the file that we downloaded right here, not the zip file, but the file that is the image file if you get a zip file. When I downloaded this, it was just an image file, so hopefully you won't get a zip file. If you did, you downloaded the wrong file. So what command do we want to do to make sure that this is an unmodified, genuine file? And that is SHA-SUM A256. That's it. And then you drag your file into this terminal window to put the location into place. You press enter, press enter, and you get a long number. That is the hash of your file. Now, let me show you something really neat. I have some random text here, and I'm going to do the exact same command with this text, SHA-SUM A256. Okay? It's just a random text that I got off the internet. So now we have that number. Now, if I go in and change anything about that file, that text file right here, let's say I'm going to add a space, one space right there. I added a space. That's it. I'm going to save it, close it, and then we're going to run that exact same command, and we're going to see if the SHA-SUM or checksum for this text file has changed from this giant number just by adding a space. Yes. This is the old one. This is the new one. It's a completely different number. That means that if I download this random text file from a GitHub page and it says this is your firmware, here's the SHA or here's the checksum, and my checksum doesn't match their checksum, then I don't have the file that they used to make the checksum, if that makes sense. In other words, it's been messed with. And it could be malicious, it could have a virus, it could destroy my life because I could use it to send my crypto somewhere, and guess where it goes? The bad guys. This is not a step you want to skip. It's very important, okay, for your security. Now that we've verified the authenticity of our download, now we can create the SD card and put our device together. Now, in order to get our SD card written, get our firmware written to our SD card, we have to use that software that I downloaded called Balena Etcher. I'm going to open that right now. Here it is. And it says flash from file. I'm going to click that button. I'm going to go to firmware, SeedSigner, open, and then I'm going to select the target. Fortunately, I have an SD card and a little SD card reader that fits into USB-C. So I'm going to put that in there and put it in my computer. And that's going to be my target right here. Select target, generic USB 3, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, mine is over 60 gigabytes. I'm going to select that. And then I press flash. I have to enter the computer password. And there we go. Done. This operating system is now flashed on that little SD card, which we can eject from the device or from the computer, and we can put it into our not yet assembled Raspberry Pi, right in this little slot here. And that's where it stays in order to boot. Otherwise, it doesn't boot. So after you've got your GPIO header pins installed into your Raspberry Pi Zero with that little device, trust me, use that little device. It's not expensive, and you can use it for any other projects going forward related to a Raspberry Pi. So now that we've got those pins installed, it's ready for final testing and assembly. Now, we don't want to put the Pi together in the case because it's very hard to get out until we know everything works, okay? Particularly the camera connection, the camera itself, the Pi, and the operating system, and of course the screen. So we're going to temporarily put them together and then fire it up with our little SD card and see what happens. Okay, let's go ahead and put our SeedSigner temporarily together a little bit. That is, we're going to put the screen on top of the Pi, plug it in, and see if it works before we put it all together. Okay, here we are with our two parts that we're going to assemble. And this is where the GPIO pins go. I have the camera installed and stuck to the back, and I really don't want to take it off because it took a while to figure out where it goes relative to this piece here. So I don't want to take that off. But basically, in order to open these or get the camera out or in, you pull that little dark bar up a little bit and slide the connector in, and then push those parts back down, and it tightens down on that connector. Hopefully that camera will work still. And basically, you just take your pinholes and your pins and you match them up and push them together. Now you have to be careful because the screen is fragile. So just gently push on one side and the other. You don't have to go all the way down. Well, it doesn't go all the way down. And you can add little stanchions here to support the upper part, but we're going to be taking this right back apart, which is not super easy, but it's gotten easier because I've done it a few times. And that's as much of an assembly as we need. You do not have to have the camera underneath here. It can be sticking out the side, and the SD card needs to be in, face down, and that's it. Let's go ahead and plug in our micro USB, and we're going to see if it fires up. I just happen to have one right here. There we go. Good sign. There's a little power light. Hopefully it will boot. Bingo. Nice. There's a couple things I want to do here. Number one, I want to check the camera. So I'm going to go to Seeds, and then the first option says scan a seed QR, etc., etc. But I'm going to create a seed with, going to create a seed with the camera. It says new seed, and there's a little camera icon right there. So I'm going to make sure our camera works, take a little picture, and there we go. It's an awesome picture, isn't it? So again, I'm going to accept that, and then we're going to have our 12-word mnemonic. I understand. Next, 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 and skip. Done. So we know camera works, which is great. And just by messing around here, I know that this little joystick goes all four directions. And if I press down on it, it selects the item that it is currently showing, which is great. So everything seems to work. These buttons work as well. Very good. All right. Totally functioning. Now we can put it together in the case. But first, we have to get it apart. And let me show you how to do that. Let's disconnect it. Now, I tried pulling and up, and that doesn't work. What works for me, actually, is wiggling the front a little bit as you pull the two sides apart. And that's it. Just be patient and be gentle. Okay, this is not easy. I've done this a bunch of times, so it's gotten easier. But the first few times I did it, oh my gosh, it was hard to get them apart. So now we need to put everything together, including our special smart card hat. So let's go ahead and put these things together. The first thing we need to put in here is the Pi Zero with the camera. Now, if you have one of these and you want to locate the camera for a 3D printed case, this is where I had to put it. I don't know if you can see this, but I actually drew some lines around there. But note the references on the board, this little gold circle and this C and E, that is where the camera needs to go. There's even the last or first few letters of some text there, or some last letters of some text right at the end here. That's exactly where it needs to go in order to line up with this hole, because that is a really tricky part to line that up while you're trying to put this in. And speaking of putting this in, you can't just put it in like this. These get caught on the edge. This will get ripped off. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a little depression in there. That's where the camera cord goes. And then you have to put everything in at a little bit of an angle. Let's see if I can get that. Well, it's not helping that the SD card's in there. Doug. All right, now things should go in a little easier. Come on. Again, those little items have to add or have to line up right with their ports. Go. And then finally, when you things in place, you can press down on it and you'll hear a snap. Like I said, I put this in once, just messing around. And when I heard that snap, I thought, how in the hell am I going to get this out? I managed to get it out without breaking it, but it was not easy. I got a very thin blade underneath the board and gently peeled it out of the case. But that is the first step. Normally, if you have a different case, you would put the screen hat on here and you're done. But we have this fancy little thing, which has GPIO pin header here. And what in the world is that? How is this going to fit on top of this when there are no pins? Well, I thought the same thing until I did that. This is just a cover so that you can push on the pins without breaking them off, or you can push on the hat without breaking off the pins. So, there really shouldn't be much room for movement here. So we just get it seated and push down, and it should sit right on there. It doesn't feel like it's down. I think it is. And this is even. The USB-C port is in place. These ports are still in place, and this is sitting right on the reader. All right, let's go ahead and put this on. See if we can get this in place. There we go. And then the last piece, if we could get this off. Then the last piece we have is the screen hat. And again, it doesn't give you much wiggle room to mess up the pins. But, try your best to get them aligned properly. And that looks like, feels like, is it. There we go. Camera. SD card slot. Make sure that fits in there. Done. USB-C power, micro USB, and micro USB power and data, micro HDMI. And that is it. This does not stick very well. You can take this on or off. And that is it. Let's see if we can power this thing up. Not sure if we can do it like this or if we have to use the USB-C. That's a good sign. Yes, we are in business. Make sure the buttons work. Good. Excellent. Let's go into settings. We're going to do an I/O test. So we'll go up, right, down, left, center, camera button, clear, and exit. Perfect. We are in business. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to show you before we left, and that was this website run by Crypto Guide, who has his own Bitcoin channel. And if you're interested in DIY things, it's a really neat channel. But he has a store on the internet at cryptoguide.tips, and this is where you can find a lot of these parts, some of which you might recognize. Pi 0 1.3, the camera, the case, 3D printed case. You can get blank cards for the card reader. You can get a card reader here, etc., and the screen. All the parts except for that hammer and header thing. And you'll notice the Pi 0 does not come with pins, although I think you can get it with pins inserted already. Let's check. Yes, soldered pin header. There we go. The pins come already in place. Honestly, I'd pay whatever the extra money is to do that and have the pins already put in place. Just a tip. What we've just built together is a completely open source, air-gapped Bitcoin signing device that costs less than $90 in total parts. Compared to a lot of commercially available hardware wallets, it's a pretty good deal. But more than just some cost savings, you've built something that's completely auditable, verifiable, and totally under your control. No supply chain attacks, no trusting corporate firmware. The smart card functionality we've added opens up some really interesting possibilities that most people don't even know exists. In the next video, I'm going to go over actually using this SeedSigner for some real Bitcoin transactions, in and out. I'll show you how to set up a wallet, scan QR codes for transaction details, sign the transaction, and back up your seed phrase to a QR code for cold storage. And in some future videos, I'm going to show you the smart card reader functionality with the Sato chip and the Seed Keeper cards. These cards can store seed phrases in EAL6+ secure, tamper-resistant, AES encrypted environments while still maintaining the air-gap security model we've built here. If this video helped you understand how to build the SeedSigner and give you the confidence to build your own, please hit the like button and subscribe for more Bitcoin security content. Drop a comment below if you run into issues during your build, or if you have any questions about the components or assembly process. I'll put links to everything in the description. That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope this helps. Stay safe, stay sovereign. I'll see you in the next video. What's up? By the... This is not good. Jesus Christ. Blockstream Jade's hardware wallet. Interestingly, Jade's stateless... The brilliant part about the SeedSigner is that it uses the Raspberry... has a sync processor running than what NASA used for the most ambitious space mission. Now it's too bright. I give up. What is going on again? Which looks... Oh my God. These are pretty clever. Look, suffice it to say, it can read cards like the smart to make sure. I haven't. Compare in EAL6+. Oh my God.